Here we are. Welcome everyone. As people shuffle in here, good to have everyone come on our weekly Monday webinars. Courtney, welcome. How's it going, my friend?
Good, man. I'm just back from Halifax. I'm in a Tim Hortons parking lot in Claresholm, Alberta.
Love it. Love it.
Pretty Canadian, right?
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Well, I'm excited for this topic today. It's something
Yeah.
that I get jazzed up about, and I'm sure the viewers will hear it in my voice too. And I kind of titled it, cheap isn't a value proposition. And being in a commission-based industry, these conversations happen all the time, and it's not so much about avoiding those conversations. It's how to navigate them accordingly and actually show value so that you can get paid for what you're worth, and just it's not only a race to the bottom. And it's something that you've taught me a lot about, Court, and I just wanted to open with that because I think it's a very worthwhile topic talking about today.
I think one of the big challenges, Ryan, that people have is they have this feeling that they don't have enough value to ask for that. And so I think there's this sense of maybe being a bit shy or out of integrity, asking for that additional commission or fighting for it when the opportunity comes up, or even just negotiating it when somebody asks. And so I know that we're going to be getting into lots of different elements to that today, and lots of different situations where you and I have both been successful in capitalizing on that through providing tons of value to buyers and sellers.
Yeah, for sure. And I always like to compare our real estate industry to other things that I'm either doing in my life or, comparing it to other industries as well. And I know it to be true that people do pay for value. Not only do they pay for value, certain people overpay for things. It's the exact reason why a Range Rover is worth more than a Nissan, right? It's the same reason why some people will spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on watches where I don't really see value in watches. So I don't see that value there. But I think it's very important to understand, like at a high level, as human beings, we do pay for value, and it's the exact same in the real estate industry too. So I wanted to kind of just mention that because we have to be aware of what do we value in our life
Yeah.
outside of our job. What do we value? What do we overpay for? And why are we justifying those things? Because there's actually answers and golden nuggets that are within those situations that we can apply to our own business too.
I love that you're thinking of it that way. And that always makes me think of like the restaurant example, because, here I am outside Tim Hortons, right? Like if I walk in Tim Hortons and I drop $20, what am I expecting? I'm expecting mediocre coffee, food that's going to be meh, and a donut that's just okay, right? Like that's what I'm expecting. But I had Tim Hortons before I hopped on the call and I knew what to expect, okay? Now, if I go into a restaurant in Vegas, and I can't think of any of the ones that I've been to, but I've been to plenty where I've spent, way too much money. The waiter's amazing. The staff is super friendly. The food is next level. I'm not even thinking about the price. I'm thinking, I'm in Vegas. I've just had one of the best meals of my life. And I don't really care what it costs, so long as I'm not playing credit card roulette with my friends and I got to pay for like two tables worth of guys, right? So I think you're right, Ryan. Like we got to ask ourselves, like, where in our lives are we spending money? Where in our lives do we see value? And then how do we create that for the client experience so that we can
Mm-hmm.
justify that revenue that we want, right?
Yeah, and I do think, I don't want to get too fluffy with mindset. And someone may say, well, Courtney or hey Ryan, like it's easy for you guys to command top commission because you aren't reliant on that one single situation for a paycheck that you need. And I would say it's actually the reverse. Like we have to act like we are willing to fall on our sword if need be,
Yeah.
because when you come off like that, people sense that stuff, right? It's
Yeah.
just like if I'm in a different sales situation, I can tell if someone's being desperate or not. And you
Yeah.
have to have that mindset that you can command the value. And honestly, that's about half the game, in my opinion, right there. You have to act like you're worth it. And then also, yes, dovetail in proper scripts, the proper sequencing, the proper value add. But you can't have that without the actual attitude and the tonality and just the cadence of, yes, I am worth what I am, right?
I know we it doesn't it always come down to that, Ryan? Like when we talk on Mondays, it like you and I could do a deep dive on mindset every single time, because when you come with that mindset, everything gets easier. But you're right, we don't want to be broken records. And so the way that I would like to just frame up this conversation to start is that I remember very specifically asking myself in the early days of my real estate career, what is my value proposition? And I'll tell you, man, for the longest time, I did not know the answer to that question. But over time, I kept on doing more and more deals. Like you, I was doing more business than most anybody else in the marketplace. And you have to look at that and say, okay, well, there must be something in that. Like, people keep hiring me. What is it that I'm doing? And I remember retrospectively looking back and acknowledging this one thing. I just did a better job explaining what realtors do.
Mm,
That was it. I mean, sure, did I do some additional things that others didn't? Yes. But did I break it down into very logical, bite-sized chunks that I delivered sequentially in very strategic and important times, kind of like a project plan? Yeah, I did. And I got masterful at that. And when people could feel like they were part of something and they were in a journey and they clearly understood what they were doing and why it was important and what was coming next and why it was important, the objections all but went away and the commissions went up. Like, it's not super complicated. It wasn't like I was the world's best realtor. I think that's the thing that we just need our viewers to hear, is that I'm not. Like, you know, you know that, but it's a lot of little things that happen. And I'd love to hear some of the stories, or maybe some of the examples, Ryan, of some of those things that I know that you do
mhm,
consistently. I mean, I know that you give your clients the sense of scarcity because you are a busy guy. And so they don't feel like they're going to be able to work with you. For one, they feel like it's a privilege to work with you, but that's more
mhm.
towards the end. I'm curious to hear what some of the things are up front that you're doing to deliver that massive value so that you can earn all the commission that you do.
Yeah, and there's a lot to it, but honestly, if I were to line up 10 agents and ask them very directly, hey, why would an agent hire you over someone else, over the other nine that are all lined up next to you? It's an unfortunate reality that a lot of agents don't have that answer. And I think for those of you
Yeah,
watching this or
it's
listening to
true.
this, that's a great way to start brainstorming, because each one of us have a secret power. We have a ninja skill that we need to actually lean into more and actually proactively think about, like, hey, what are my natural gifts? How can I actually, like you said, educate my seller or my buyer on why should they use me as opposed to anyone else in the marketplace? And that simple question, like, hey, why would I hire you instead of someone else? That's where you have to have an answer. That's where you actually have to have a value proposition. I legitimately just had a seller last week. I was helping a junior agent on a listing appointment, and that seller asked us that, right? And the junior agent unfortunately didn't have the answer. Luckily, I was there with her at that time, and I could explain why their best choice is to come with us as opposed to anyone else. But I would
Yeah,
encourage every single person out there to have a blank sheet of paper, write that down, and just start brainstorming. I would also
right.
encourage agents to have somewhat of a mission statement, because me personally, I'm going to facilitate a journey for my buyers and sellers that's as easy as possible and as stress-free as possible. That's like my internal mission statement, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's super foundational.
Ryan, one of the things that I think would be beneficial for us to go through, though, because I know a lot of times on our webinars each week, we hear from newer agents that are in their careers and are trying to crack in and learn how we did this. Like, you know, Ryan and I have hundreds and thousands of transactions behind us, and it wasn't always like that. And so I think it might be worthwhile for us to kind of just backpedal to the early days. And I'll share with you, friends, one of the things that was really effective for me, because I beat the pants off a lot of really top producing agents back in the early days. This is going back like 15, 16 years. And like you know, this watching this, you know, now that we've sold as a team like thousands of houses, we started at one. Like, that
Mhm,
was, there was a day with Jim Gervin in Fort McLeod. That was my first house. And the thing that I leaned on, going to Ryan's point, documenting what my value prop was, it was this. I care more than anybody that you'll probably meet about you having a really good experience where you're fully informed about everything that's happening, not as it's happening, but 3 steps before it's happening. And furthermore, I'm not as busy as that other agent that you talk to. I have more time, where they have 30 to 40, 50 clients that they're looking after a year. I have maybe 15 to 20, and you're one of them. And I plan on earning your business and making you a big part of my future in real estate. And I promise you that I'll give you every ounce of my energy right now. guys, when you communicate the fact that you have discipline, time, and a plan, most people want to say yes to you, right? Because
Mhm.
listen, I've been on the other side of that. I've lost business when I was still in production to agents that did have time, and they could tell that I was too busy, a little bit distracted, taking a little too long to get back to phone calls. Like, clients know what that feels like. And if you're a new agent, don't undervalue these things like time and attention. Okay, people really care about that stuff.
Love that. And it's funny when you were kind of going through that, I was thinking through um in my earlier days, and one of the big pieces that I understood very quickly on is that depending on what client I'm dealing with, they perceive value very differently. Prime example, if I'm dealing with a millennial first time home buyer that hates phone calls, and maybe doesn't even have a data plan, right? They just work off of WhatsApp or something like that, or Snapchat. They're gonna
Yeah,
see and feel value much differently than, say, example of helping a retired couple move out of their condo that they lived in for 30 years, and they have a landline and no internet, right?
yeah,
So I think it's a very case by case. Yes, there's kind of foundational pillars of how I like the journey for my clients to go, but just acknowledging like, hey, this person that I'm with right now, if I was in their shoes, if I put my brain into their head, what do they actually see of value, and how can I convey
yeah.
that on the spot?
And here's the kicker. The thing that nobody seems to be thinking about when it comes down to this, when when you think about a needs assessment, right? Most people think of a needs assessment as like, what is it that they want to buy or sell? Where do they want to move in? When? Who's going to do it and why? Like all that kind of stuff. Here's the way that I want new agents to think about their needs assessment. This is your opportunity to get that buyer or seller to tell you exactly what it is they want you to do, right?
Mhm.
Here's all you have to do. So we could role play it, Ryan. So say we're sitting down, you're a seller. I'm just going to ask you. So Ryan, tell me, is this the first house that you've sold?
Oh no, we sold one 5 years ago when we moved here.
Oh, okay, awesome. Tell me about that experience. How did it go for you?
Yeah, it was okay. It was a little clunky. Sometimes the agent they seemed a little bit scattered, and there's a few showings that got screwed up, and I mean it was fine. Property got sold, but there's a reason that, we're not calling them again.
Yeah, fair enough. So Ryan, maybe if you don't mind, I'm just curious, like if you could pick the three most favorite things about that agent, the things that they did that you appreciated most, what would those three things be, do you think?
They were pretty quick at getting feedback to us. Like it would be kind of that evening. They did have an assistant that was doing that feedback for us. I just thought it was kind of weird when we didn't hear back. So it was nice to get that feedback really quick, and then we can adjust things if need be, because we were on market for a while. And then also what we really enjoyed was, the photos turned out pretty good. There was this fancy virtual tour thing that we like to click through, and yeah, that was those would be kind of the top things.
So we don't need to
Mhm.
keep going, guys, but you get the point. I'm going to
Yeah.
get Ryan to tell me the top three things. Then I'm going to say, so Ryan, if you don't mind, would you mind sharing with me some of the reasons that you're not hiring this agent again? And he's going to tell me that. And guys, I've got a roadmap. Like that's literally all that I need to go ahead and blow Ryan's mind. Like all of a sudden, my listing presentation fills all those gaps in and address all those highlight real things that Ryan has. And I'll even put them in the contract. Like
Mhm.
I'll put in the terms. He likes to have a phone call once a week. Perfect. I'll put it in the contract. We're gonna have a conversation every week Wednesday. Shit, we'll do a Zoom if you want, Ryan.
Mhm.
You want to have regular feedback, you betcha. I'll call the agent personally. The other thing that you wanted, absolutely. We'll put it in the terms of the contract. These other three things that you didn't like, you'll never experience those with me no matter what. Does that sound fair, Ryan? Absolutely great. And when you do it this way and talk to people about what they can expect from you, you're going to have their business forever and their friend's business. All you got to do is ask, right?
Yep. And it's kind of a good part for no, first and foremost, you're actually having a needs assessment, because some agents aren't even doing that right now. And I think the whole point we're trying to drive home here to the audience is that you have to give value before you have the conversation or the paperwork about the commission. Because I do sense this, especially when I'm in competition with listings, because I'm going to meet a seller that's just met with a bunch of different agents, right?
Yeah,
And even if they do come with like, hey, what's your commission charge? I need to deflect that, because I can't command a top commission if they don't know what I'm about. And I need to
right.
tailor those specific things to what they see value towards. So a lot of agents are just kind of hoping to not talk about commissions and for it to never come up. And I would encourage them to like throw value in front of that first, and then you'll be surprised at how those objections just get mitigated and sometimes never come up.
Exactly. And one of the greatest examples of that, Ryan, is with the guaranteed sale, right? People would call into the office, tell me about your guaranteed sale. How much will you buy for my house? So forth and so on. We can certainly answer those questions on the phone, but here's the challenge. I'm going to disqualify myself. Okay.
Mhm.
They're just looking for an opportunity to disqualify me. That's what the commission question is like. Is it higher than this other person? That's like me sitting here in my car, picking up the phone and saying, "Hi, this is a restaurant. We've got a meal for you for $100. Would you like it?" And I'm like, "Ooh, $100 is a lot of money for a meal." And then come to find out it's a meal for 8 at the fanciest restaurant in Calgary. Like all of a sudden it was like,
Yeah.
95% off. Well, I didn't have the value proposition to identify whether or not it was a good deal, but we allow clients to do that to us. So we
Yeah.
have to deflect. It's not some like strange sales strategy. We simply have to give ourselves the opportunity to communicate the value prop to allow that person to make an educated choice.
Yeah. And it's funny because a lot of sellers, their mind immediately goes to commission, and that's the front facing objection. But what's crazy is I know that's not actually true. And the reason I know that's not true is because if someone came to my house tonight and offered me $400,000 more than what I knew it's worth, and I had to give someone $100,000, I'd be like, yeah, sure, sounds good. Commission isn't the issue. They're probably worried about what they're going to be netting at the end of the day. And if your value proposition can explain to them, well, hey, listen, I get commission's a part of it, but if I can get you more money in the back of your jeans at the end of the day, then commission it's not an issue. So I think it's very important to understand at a foundational level that our clients may be wanting cheap or wanting a commission reduction, but that's not their actual issue. And further, to double down on that, in my mind, I'm like, wait a second. This is probably the most important asset that these people own. You want cheap for someone to facilitate that journey? No, that's
Right.
that's not it. And sometimes I have to tell sellers that. And that's where, back to my earlier point, I'm willing to fall on my own sword. I never have to, because now value proposition is established. They're like, holy smokes, I actually don't mind paying more for this service. Right.
Yeah.
So a lot of it's
Yeah.
within kind of that, coming to it with that mindset and also handling those objections accordingly. Right.
And I think that the kicker is that a lot of people think that, because we're successful and we've sold a lot of real estate, that we have some magic hoo-ha thing that is inaccessible to the rest of the marketplace. And that's just not true. What we have are sophisticated, well orchestrated systems that we know work. We're just really good at communicating them. But the truth is that any other agent in the marketplace could access them. And furthermore, and I was just talking about this in a conference in Halifax. Another barrier to entry, I think, for a lot of agents is that they don't feel like they have the budget to market well. And I want to talk about how to do that really quickly. Just real quick, friends,
Mm.
if you're new to the business and you're concerned about not having the upfront capital to go ahead and market a property effectively, go ahead and just use the internet. Find some strategies, find a local marketing company, whatever it is. Go to that person and say, listen, I don't have the cash to pay you up front, but how about this? I'll give you a 25% bonus and pay you at closing. And in my contract, I have a cancellation fee that gives me all of the money that I would need to pay you. And I'll pay you even if they cancel for this work, including your 25% bonus. Would that be agreeable to you? And do that with each provider that you need to work with and offer them a 25% bump. Every one of them takes that. You're going to put a loan agreement in place. You're going to formalize it so it's not just a handshake in the wind deal. This is you being accountable to those dollars. Everybody wants that deal. They're going to make 25% extra and they got to wait like
Mm.
45, 60 days for the money. No big deal compared to a lot of people that just aren't paying them. You will. All you got to do when you sign that agreement with your seller is put a term in there that says upon cancellation or expiration, you agree to pay back, if it's 5,000, now it's going to be a $6,000 marketing budget, whatever that is. Super
Mm.
easy to do.
Yep. And my mind goes to, especially with photography, videography, drone footage, all those service providers will be happy to do that because they're also seeing, hey, there's going to be future business with this person too. And if I can get a premium, why wouldn't you just do one or two up front, right? So no,
Exactly.
that's an amazing kind of concept to work in for newer agents. And also, guys, you have to remember, to Courtney's earlier point, it's more about how we're explaining our value propositions. Like, you don't need to have the fancy tools and the flashy CRMs. But for example, if you communicate to people like, hey, listen, when a lead or someone inquires on your listing, it's my duty to get to that lead as quick as possible, ideally within 5 minutes. If I'm not getting to it within 5 minutes, someone else on my team is going to hop on that. The reason that's important is because after 5 minutes, we know our percentage of conversion drops drastically on that lead. So we need to get to people immediately. So just like something simple like that, getting to a lead costs $0, but if you can convey it to a seller, they see value in it. So we don't need to have crazy marketing budgets. It's more about, hey, do we come with some value and can we actually communicate it properly to that person sitting across the table to us?
One of my favorite ones, Ryan, that I started using really regularly in the early days, and it was like it blew my mind how effective it was. And it's so simple because I didn't have a lot of sophisticated marketing. I don't even think anybody had a drone back in those days, but I would talk to them about being willing to go door knock neighborhoods to try to find buyers for them. And what I realized that was that unto itself wasn't particularly valuable to the sellers that I was speaking to. But when I threw a role play at them, their minds were blown. So all I changed was this one thing. And so say I was meeting with Ryan and I might say, so one of the things that I want to do, Ryan, for your property in particular is I know that there's some folks in this neighborhood that probably have friends that have really liked their home and would maybe like to move in just because of proximity to schools and amenities and the fact that, they're friends, of course. And so what I like to do in a case like yours, and I don't do it all the time, Ryan, but what I would do in a case like yours is door knock a few hundred homes in your neighborhood. And so usually the script will go like this, Ryan. I'll just, knock, 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 and you'll say hello. I'll say, hey, my name's Courtney. I'm with the Atkinson team over at EXP Realty. Hope I'm not getting you at a bad time. Is this all right? And
Yep,
then you'll
yep.
say, yeah. Sometimes you have to coax them through the role play, right? Most people you do. I say, awesome. So here's what I'm trying to do. I promised a client of mine down the street that I would actually door knock the neighborhood because we've got their property coming to market really soon. And we just know that folks like you like to have some control over the neighborhood. Maybe you've got some friends that have been thinking about making a move or that really like your house and have been looking. So I promised them that what I would do was go out and knock doors. In fact, I said I would knock 200 doors exactly to see if I couldn't do some off-market matchmaking. So would you mind if I asked you, do you have some friends or family members, or maybe you're thinking about making a move? And so
Mhm.
I would just throw that role play out like in a listing presentation. That was a game changer. Just that one thing, the fact that I clearly had a script, that I had clearly done it, that I clearly practiced it, and that I wasn't scared to throw it out in the presentation. Like I could put paperwork in front of them right then, they would sign it. It was
Mhm.
crazy. And I'm like, this is door knocking. It's free.
Love that. And I think something to kind of underpin that too is I think this is something that drives me nuts with the industry is, agents think of value as like, hey, I need a fancy presentation or a slide deck or a 17-page PDF listing thing. I go to my listing appointments with zero marketing materials now. Now, could I start like that? Nope. But I need that seller to be looking at me. Ideally, I have a whiteboard to actually walk them through some of the marketing plans and the strategies. But me just my handwriting looks like I'm in grade 7, but they see value in that because they're looking at me as an educator and someone with authority that actually knows their stuff. I don't want them to be distracted with a flashy PDF or a TV screen with a slide deck on it. I want their eyeballs to be on me. It's the same when you go public speak, Courtney. You don't want them to be glued to the screens reading everything, all the paragraphs. You want them to
That's
be
right.
looking at you. So don't think, guys, like you need a fancy budget or a high budget or a fancy like package. I want people to look at me and ask me questions and I can react to them as opposed to having something third party that they're glued to.
We have such privilege now. I mean, look at me. I'm in a Tim Hortons parking lot, doing a high value webinar for literally hundreds of people. And I'm using technology that everybody has access to. And so just remember, friends, that like in your pocket is some of the most advanced technology in human history, right? And how can you use that more effectively? Doing free social media strategies, using YouTube, doing door knocking, like super basic stuff, being the value yourself. And one critical thing that I learned back in the early days when we had to use like proper cameras for this is that there's so much merit in recording yourself and just practicing by watching yourself give your presentation, manage mock objections, and just keep going through whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's a buyer presentation, seller presentation, how it is you like to show properties, what you're going to do to manage objections around your commission conversation, which I highly recommend that you do not have until you've got commitment. All of those things, when you're recording them and watching yourself, yeah, it's awkward, but guess what's happening? You're getting better in front of an audience that's not at risk for not paying you. Like, that's the way to do it, Brandon. You got the tool
Mhm.
in your pocket.
Yeah, it's so true. It's like from what I'm hearing you say, Courtney, it's like treat this job like a craft, right? And we
It's
need
a
to
crap.
continually get better at our jobs. We're technically, well, we are professionals and we help people buy and sell real estate, and it's a competitive industry. That's why I love this business, is because there's agents out there that are absolutely grasping at straws to keep their license, and then there's other agents out there that are using this industry to absolutely transform their life. So I'm like, hey,
Mhm.
if there's a spectrum of agents out there's a reason for it, right? And we need to continually get better. And one of those things, yes, it is getting uncomfortable. It is maybe, trying something different, or it's like Courtney said, record yourself and figure out like, hey, this actually seemed clunky. What if I did this? Or what if I changed this up? Or God forbid, we're actually maybe going out and doing some role play with our colleagues. Like that gets really awkward. But those are the
Sure.
positions that I encourage you guys to lean into. It's just like any other professional sport that I see. The best hockey players in the world, they're practicing every single day. The best whatever sports players in the world, they are practicing their craft every day. And for whatever reason in our business, a lot of folks don't treat it like a true craft. And I'm like, hey,
Yeah.
this is a primary source for me and my family to live a bigger and better life. I'm going to get better at it every single day.
And the thing that I learned really early on, Brian, was that if I could just pick the right pain, I would be so much better off. Because I have had the pain of being broke. I have had the pain of being depressed. I have had the pain of confusion, of not knowing what to do, not where knowing where to focus my efforts. And when I got disciplined and started focusing the pain of picking up the phone, the pain of facing rejection, the pain of getting out into the weather and going to knock doors, the pain of doing an open house hungover when I wanted to sleep in, which I did lots of back in the early days when I was a lot younger. But the point is that, hey, listen, you got to have pain. Like, don't have the pain where you're broke and your life sucks. Have the pain where you're challenging yourself and making shit tons of money. Like, that's just better pain.
So true. It's so true. Um, I kind of want to get into a few examples, Courtney. I have a few scenarios written down here just on my notes.
Yeah.
But um, talk to me about where you want to push commission discussion to, and if it does come up before that point, maybe how you mitigate that, or you try to shuffle it on down the timeline until the appropriate part.
For sure. So I'm going to put that conversation off until the closing table. And guys, I want you to know that in the early days of my career, that was in my listing presentation. Okay. And it was one of the biggest mistakes that I made. I got a listing presentation. I didn't have one in the early days. So I finally got one. And then I put my commission in, and I thought I was smart. I had three options. There was like the option, the middle one that I wanted them to take. There was the discounted option that I didn't want them to take, and the really expensive one that I didn't think anybody ever would take. Here's the problem: is that that conversation gave people the opportunity to disqualify me before they had made the decision to work with me. What you want to do, no matter what your process is, and we could work with you in one of our weekly coaching calls if you would like to go through what the process should look like for you in your marketplace. We do a
Mhm.
two-step process. Step one, needs assessment, gives us a chance to do some research. Step two, presentation, marketing, valuation, all that kind of stuff. Get the commitment, and then sign paperwork. And right around that point or at paperwork, they ask the question, oh, like, what's your commission? And like, I love it then because they've
Mhm.
already decided they're working with me.
Yeah.
So now automatically the objection handlers are much easier because the decision's already there, right? Like the likelihood of somebody getting up out of the room right now and walking out is incredibly low. And if they do, I could get them back, right? Oh,
Mhm.
you know what? Let's just have the conversation. So to the end is the point, at paperwork is the point, Ryan. And when somebody does give me an objection handler, there's a bunch of great ones that we could do. I mean, we could do a whole call on that. But one of my favorite ones is, I mean, gosh, there's a number of ones. So I might say, yeah, you know what? That's a great question, Ryan. A lot of people do want to know about commission. Let me ask you this. What did you pay last time that you did your real estate transaction?
Paid 7 and 3.
Okay, fair enough. And how did you feel about that?
I from calling around, that's kind of what agents are charging. So I thought that was fair. I think it's a lot. They didn't seem like they did, that much work for 25 grand, but it is what it is. I
Yeah.
get, we have to pay it.
Yeah, for sure. And I can well imagine that that is an average, and an average agent would charge that. Ryan, did you have the sense that based on our conversation, all the behind the scenes work, all the marketing that we're doing, all the systems, all the expertise, my negotiating expertise as well, that there is additional expertise and that there is additional value there?
Yeah, what you showed me is totally different, or at least more thorough than I've ever seen.
Fantastic. He just told me he sees more value. I'm putting the
Mhm,
paperwork in front of him again. Like, you don't have to go on endlessly, guys. Like,
mhm,
all I need is some sort of affirmation, and I'm just sliding the paper and the pen across the table again. And he might
mhm,
say, well, I'm not too sure about that. And I'm just going to make him fight for it. Like, I want him to prove to me that my commission's worth it. That's really what it comes down to. And too often, here's what agents do, guys: they fly into defense mode and they start defending it. Okay.
mhm,
Don't defend your commission. Make your client tell you why you're worth it.
mhm,
They're going to talk themselves into it. You just have to ask questions, stop making statements. It's like one of the most critical things that you need to do as an agent when you're talking about commission: be in control of the conversation. You can't control the conversation when you're talking and making statements. You control conversations when you're asking questions. So ask questions, okay? And just keep asking questions. You can just keep asking questions until you fatigue them and they'll eventually sign. It's a trick. It also works, okay? I
mhm,
mean, we could go on endlessly. That's probably a good session that we could do one day, Ryan, is like just conversations around commission handlers.
mhm,
My last kind of ditch effort for that, by the way, guys, is to keep my full 7 and 4 commission and discount the buy side commission. And usually when they start to see that, they want to go back up to full commission. I'm like, yeah, fair enough. I would suggest that you do that as well. So then I
mhm.
end up getting it all anyways, right? And
Yeah.
so does the buy side. So lots of ways that we can talk about that.
So
In the very
something to
early, so go ahead.
I was just gonna say something to pin there, guys, is a lot of agents, when that objection comes, it gets uncomfortable. Like it does. And agents want to get out of that uncomfortable situation by just being like, okay, well, why don't we do this? And they cut it and discount it. I'd encourage you guys to like sit in that uncomfortable spot
Yes.
and have a presence about you that you're okay sitting in that uncomfortable spot. Because you know damn well
Yeah.
that that seller or that person beside you feels that uncomfort level rise and the awkwardness level rise. And if you look comfortable in that situation, now you're coming off as a true professional, in my opinion. And let's face it, guys, if you're just willing to slash your own commission paycheck, what are you going to be willing to do when your client actually gets an offer and you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars? And you need to
Yeah.
dig your heels in that moment to justify your commission because you know you're worth that much. And you need to show at that moment in time that you're not willing to back down over just whatever it is, a couple $1,000s.
It's a great question to point out, Ryan. And you can simply ask this question, guys. So Ryan, let me ask you this question. And by the way, I respect that you want to save as much money as possible. But let me ask you this question: you want to save a little bit of money in your commission, a couple $1,000s, probably. The truth is that that couple $1,000s represents all the profit that I'll likely make on your transaction. Okay. And so I want to be motivated to do this work for you. But let me ask you another question, Ryan. If I couldn't stand to negotiate for myself and a couple $1,000s at the end of the day to help pay for my bills, my business, and a vacation maybe at the end of the year, would that put me in a very good position to be able to negotiate for you and your biggest asset? And I'm just going to dead eye them, right? And like, watch the blood drain from their face, friends. Like, if you can't do that in that moment, they're going to bulldoze you, and they know that the next agent's going to bulldoze you as well, and they're not going to pay you as much. Like, you've got to practice these things. You have to be good at it. You have to be prepared for it. And Ryan's absolutely right. Like, when you can sit in that discomfort and maintain composure, right, you're proving to that person your worth, right? You're just sitting there face to face in that stress, showing that you're a true professional. Like, that's what this is about. Absolutely.
I love that. And I love that these webinars are recorded too, because I would literally just rewatch that, what you just said there, Courtney, and have it ingrained into my mind. and just speak it out loud, that objection handler will make you thousands of dollars, guys, thousands of dollars, just by having the confidence to say that and be able to sit in that discomfort and just look straight in your seller's eyes, and they're going to sign that piece of paper, right? And
They will.
do not think, guys, and I'm rooted in this, cheap is not a value proposition. It is not. And you owe it to yourself to stand your ground and get paid what you're worth. Because if you do have a true value proposition, it's worth every single penny that those sellers are going to be paying. And not to mention, depending on where this industry goes in the few years, you're going to be having these conversations with buyers too. So,
That's right. Twice,
like,
twice as much.
yeah, and I see that as an opportunity because I'm like, hey, wait a second, if we can command top dollar for sellers, I mean, we're going to be able to command top dollar for buyers too, because I know if anything, if there's a weak spot in this industry, it's on the buyer side, and buyers do deserve better representation, in my opinion. So it's like, giddy up. A lot of these things are the same concepts. It's just the scripts are going to be tweaked a little bit more catered towards buyers.
And you'd asked the question, Ryan, and I kind of blew back past it about, how to handle that question that a seller or a buyer might ask in the very beginning of, hey, Courtney, what's your commission? Like sometimes that's a phone call, sometimes it's a friend. And by the way, guys and gals, don't treat your friends differently. Okay. Mistake that I made so much in the early days. The challenge that people often don't realize, particularly in the early days, is their friends want to pay them less than other people do. Why? Because they've seen you in ways that your other clients haven't. And so they don't value in the same way. So you have to be more professional with your friends than you do with complete strangers. Rules. Okay. Just remember that. But when somebody asks me about my commission straight out of the chute, here's what I'm going to do. Okay. Exact script. You know what, Ryan? That's a really important question. I'm glad that you asked it. Now, the truth is, in our marketplace, the average commissions run between 4 and 6%. And we've got marketing plans that certainly span that gamut. But what I'd really want to do is go to your property, meet with you, talk to you about what it is that you plan to do, how you want to do it, how quickly you want to sell. Maybe you want an instant offer on the property. Maybe you want some additional marketing assets. And once we've had that conversation and talked about what it is that you need, and I can put a custom marketing plan in front of you, then we can have that conversation about price and you can associate some value to it. How does that sound, Ryan?
Yeah, yeah,
Like
I
I've
love
just
that.
told him what we've just told you, right? Like
Mhm.
that's literally what we've been saying. And I'm just saying it to the consumer. And they're like, oh, right. Yeah, I don't know what the cheeseburger is going to look like. Does it have gold tin foil or is it from Wendy's? Because if it's got gold tin foil, it's obviously going to be worth more. And yeah, I would pay more for that. So let's wait. And they do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I do think as a consumer, they probably feel a little awkward just starting to reach out to real estate companies, and that's just going to be like an icebreaker for them to be like, "Oh, I'm going to call around for commissions," right? It's just a
Mhm.
question that they're opening a conversation with. They may not even really be too worried about it, but maybe they just heard that that's what you're supposed to ask ahead of time. And if
Right.
you have that script nailed down, guys, you're going to stand out from any other agent that they're calling, and you're going to get front facing with them. And another script that I love using is telling them, hey, I wouldn't be doing my job if blank, right? And then you would insert kind of what you're
Mhm.
trying to accomplish there. Like, Mr. Seller, I wouldn't be doing my job if I just, spewed out a number and I didn't know enough about your situation to figure out how to exactly help you down the road. So why don't we do
Yep.
this?
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. I
So,
love that. I use that when I'm being asked what the price of a property is when I've literally just spent 5 minutes in it. Like
mhm,
it doesn't matter how much real estate I do. I never guess. Like I've never guessed. I never will guess. Doesn't matter. I'm going to do my research and I'll come back and I'll say, it's a really important question. And despite the fact that we've sold thousands of properties, that's a question that I don't answer on the fly like this because it's too important. And I think we can both agree that given the size of your investment, it deserves time and energy and focus and attention. And I'm going to give it that. So let's
mhm,
have that conversation after I've invested that time in our next meeting. How does that sound? And they're going to
mhm.
be like, well, fuck yeah, that's amazing. Let's do it that way. You're clearly smarter than me. Well, that's ignorant. That's not the case, but I've clearly thought about it is what they're suggesting. And it's true. I
Yeah.
have.
Yeah, love that. So many ways to go about it. And it's just getting comfortable enough to like have those words spit out of your mouth at that given time instead of retreating and just saying something that every other agent's going to say, oh, yeah, we charge 4.5%. Okay, thanks. Click. That conversation's
Right.
over. There's no more
Yeah.
value to be given because you've just basically answered their question and there's no need to carry on, right?
Yeah.
So love that.
Pro tip, I just want to insert real quick, and I know we're running out of time, Ryan, but when you get people calling you, asking you questions about anything, friends, here's what I want you to think about. Think about the 2-for-1 information exchange. Okay. Just remember, when you're asking the questions, you're in control. Okay. You can control a conversation based on environment or based on the questions that you ask. So somebody will often call and ask you what the price of a property is. Hey, great question. I'll look that up for you right now. What's your name, by the way? Cool. And tell me what has you interested in this property? There's my 2 questions. Okay, great. Yeah, I can see this property's been on the market for 31 days. Looks like it's at a price reduction of about $10,000. Hey, I'm just pulling up some more of it right here. Let me ask you this. Do you have a house to sell or are you renting right now? Okay, cool. Is it just you buying or is there somebody else buying with you? There's my 2, right? Boom, back into it. Okay, you're curious about the price. Awesome. So the price for that property is 579.9. Hey, let me ask you, now that I'm thinking about it, have you gone to the bank and gotten pre-qualified yet, or what landed you on this particular price point? Question 1. Question 2, like, see that
Mhm.
2-for-1, friend, and that puts me in control, right? That's a needs assessment on the fly. And then here's what I can do at the end of that. I can find other properties because I already know what it is they're looking for and where they're at in their journey. And nobody else is doing it. It's super easy. All you got to do is take
Mhm.
charge, right?
Yeah, and I call that almost like a purposeful delay in information, right? Like, hey, yeah, totally get that. I'm just pulling up my laptop here while I have you for it, and then you ask the question, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
again, guys, if you just answer that question right away, that conversation is going to be over. And in my opinion, we're not serving that person best by just saying the, list price and that's it. Like, no, we need to help them out through this journey. They're probably lost. There's a reason they're calling you, not someone else. And it's our
Mm-hmm.
job to help these folks out, right? It's our job to
Yeah.
figure out how to best serve them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well,
Yeah.
that's a lot of information there in 45 minutes. And I think there's a lot of spin-off kind of content and scenarios and I would say, themes that we can go off of in future weeks. So appreciate you showing up, Courtney. I know you're
Yeah.
traveling and any closing
No
thoughts
worries.
on your end?
I did just have one thing that I wanted to share, and it's a bit of a philosophical viewpoint, but I do think it's important that we close with this. When you're new in our industry, I understand that you feel like you don't know anything and that you don't have anything to contribute, and then you feel like that's not worth very much money. Okay, the challenge is that most real estate agents also feel that way, and the only difference that you need to make in order to be somebody that's paid fairly, or at least on average, okay, is just to communicate what it is that you can do. You don't have to do what the top producers are doing. Just communicate what it is that you can do effectively and consistently, and you'll make at least that average commission. And then in time, as you start to get more comfortable being uncomfortable, then you can have more evolved, higher level conversations where you can challenge people, where you can manage objections a little bit more effectively and continue to drive up your value. But in the very beginning stages, I just want you to know, no matter where you're at in your journey, if you practice these strategies and you're using your camera just to get used to having those conversations, people will pay you. There's no question about it. Don't discount your commission. You don't need to. Just get used to managing objections and presenting the value that you have in you today, and you'll earn it.
Love that. It's the best way we
Cool.
could finish this off. Appreciate that, Courtney. To everyone, please keep registering for these events. It's a lot of fun and appreciate
Yeah, yeah.
bringing you guys value every week. So thanks, Court. We'll see you
Yep.
guys.
Okay. Take care, guys. Ciao.